The race to the sun, Paris-Nice, got underway yesterday with a 6-mile individual time trial. The day of truth smiled on the Swede Gustav Larsson, who proved to be the fastest man on the day. The heavy rains towards the end dampened the speed of pre-race favourite Bradley Wiggins, who narrowly missed out on the victory. Americans Levi Leipheimer and TJ Van Garderen proved that they were both ready to do battle in this week-long test.
Van Garderen confirms what he set out to do at the start of the year, perhaps win Paris-Nice.
Today offers maybe the only chance for the sprinters to show their speed. In-form Belgian Tom Bonen will try and better adversary Thor Hushovd in the dash for the line in stage 2 of Paris-Nice, next on the NBC Sports Network. Orléans, the city made famous by Joan of Arc, will be today the host of the opening road race finish of this year's Paris-Nice. Hello everybody and welcome to the epic cycle presented by Michelob Ultra as we think about today's second stage, a 115-mile journey from Mantes-la-Jolie all the way down to Orléans in the very heart of La Beauce region of France. I'm Paul Sherwin, alongside me Bob Roll. Yesterday, before we go to today's action, let's think about the rain and what it did to affect what they call the race of truth.
From the first rider in the time trial to the last, there was a 3-hour time difference. Gustav Larsson started near the front after the first hour of racing, but for the last 20 riders in the time trial, they faced slick roads that might have slowed them down, especially Bradley Wiggins, who's only just over 1 second behind the stage winner, Gustav Larsson.
But the clock does not lie, and the man who will go out onto this second stage of Paris-Nice this year will be Gustav Larsson, with a good solid lead ahead of some of the other contenders. Maybe more importantly, though, Levi Leipheimer in third place put a very solid ride in there for looking for 4 seconds. TJ Van Garderen, 23 years of age from the United States, also just looking for a mere 9 seconds. But today is all about the sprinters, I'd have to say, Bob, because when you look at that road from Mantes-la-Jolie all the way down to Orléans, it reminds me of a pancake.
185.5 kilometers, 115 miles. There is one Category 3 out on the road. That will give points for the King of the Mountain jerseys, one feed zone, one sprint point, but we expect this to be a sprinter's delight today. There are no other flat stages in this year's Paris-Nice. They will not want to let this stage go by. Watch for the sprinters to compete in the streets of Orléans for the stage win.
Well, there are a lot of sprinters spread about various teams in this year's Paris-Nice, but I suppose when you start to think about the cream coming up to the top of the milk, the best of the best, I would have to say, have got to be in form Tom Bonen of Belgium.
Tom Bonen already with 4 wins on the season. He's returned to the top of the sprint game, and he had some great results earlier in the spring. That bodes well for his ability against the rest of the sprinters on today's stage.
Yes, Tom Bonen is a very strong bike rider, but let's not forget the former champion of the world and great sprinter on American Team BMC.
Over from Garmin to Team BMC in the off-season, one of the newsworthy transfers, Thor Hushovd, the god of thunder, might not be going for the sprints, hoping for bigger things in the classics to come, but BMC still no wins in 2012 so far. They need to start doing something on today's stage.
And they're not the only ones, because this is probably the only chance this year in Paris-Nice for the sprinters to show why they are the warriors of the route. So up next, stage 2 of Paris-Nice. Well, going straight into the action here on the second day of Paris-Nice, the first day out onto the open road, and I have to tell you immediately the most important thing of today's stage has got to be the winds, which are buffeting the riders and splitting this main field into sections all over the road. 46 degrees Fahrenheit, a very chilly day for the bike riders here this afternoon, and 21 miles an hour are those crosswinds. Now, Bob, whenever you get a crosswind, you might think that riding in the wind is not difficult on a bike, but when you get these winds, it starts to really rip the race into pieces.
This is the second group out on the roads. You're absolutely right. Crosswind battles can blow a peloton to pieces as dramatically as the mountain climbs. It's easy to lose a tremendous amount of time once the crosswinds blow. To get the aerodynamic shelter from the riders in front of you, you must sit to the side of the riders. The problem is you always run out of road, and so you get these splits in the field. You have very small groups scattered across here, especially in Northern Europe, and this part of France on today's stage is no exception to the ravages of the crosswind.
Well, the long shadows are being cast by the sun, which is starting to go low into the sky, and if you look at the color of that sky behind, we may well be getting just a little bit of rain down towards the latter part of the afternoon. The race is now split up into about 4 or 5 different pieces. There are 21 riders in that leading group of riders, but probably, Bob, more importantly, riders missing from that leading group of 21 include the overnight leader Gustav Larsen and of course Tony Martin. This is the leading group we're looking at. Tête de la course, the front end of the bike race, and I'll try and quickly run through some of the big names. Tom Bonan, Levi Leipheimer in this leading group. You might have just noticed Bradley Wiggins, the British national champion, second place in the overall standings. Alejandro Valverde, Joachim Rojas is in there for Movistar, the Spanish national champion, and as you can see, Geraint Thomas in the black jersey coming through. There's the Spanish national champion right now in that slightly different colored jersey with the white and red bands. This is a very serious move. The gap between the two groups at the moment, Bob, though, is only around about 35 seconds with 55 kilometers to go, 32 miles of racing.
Very select group in the front here. There's Taylor Phinney right in the middle of your screen in the red and black jersey. Great riding by the young professional. Only 21 men represented in this group, and Taylor Phinney to be amongst them, that's very impressive.
Well, actually, what's even more impressive, there we can see the yellow jersey. He's in their group a little bit further back on the road, the overnight leader. He will not be too happy with being there. But here, Bob, just looking from the helicopter, you get a chance to see how these riders work in the crosswind. Now, the wind is actually buffeting the riders from their right-hand shoulders. You have to ride in a big diagonal line across the road. Ooh, this is what it's all about, Bob. You've got to fight for position in a crosswind like this, don't you?
Desperate moments in Paris-Nice on this stage, out on the open road. Time trial yesterday to give us an idea of who's riding well, but a whole different set of circumstances for the men today. Gustav Larsen, he is doing the work by himself. What would you ideally have a few teammates to help him try to get back across? That's the second group in front of him. He still has another whole group to go.
Number of riders missing. I just noticed the number 121, that is Thomas Vogler. He's got a green jersey on, riding for the Team at Europe car. He was hoping to ride well here this afternoon in this bike race because he didn't do a great individual time trial yesterday. Tony Martin, as we said, is also missing from the group. Andreas Kloden didn't find his way into that leading group of riders. So this, for the moment, is a war of attrition. They're trying to close down that gap. They're trying to pull it all back together. Big Jens Voigt stuck in the middle. It's very rare for Jens Voigt in that black jersey of Radio Shack Nissan Trek to miss a move like this.
Well, also the whole Liquigas squad missing out. A lot of them missed out. Saur, Saxo Bank, not one rider represented in the front group, nor does Green Edge or Cofidis. Absolute desperation on the road.
Well, these riders from Garmin at the back here having a little bit of a hard time as well, trying to get themselves back into the bike race here this afternoon, just slipping off the back there. Christophe Lemervel, he was 10th overall in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, back in 2010. But Bob, when you lose the wheel, when you lose the slipstream, you just can't close that gap down anymore, can you?
The crosswind battles in Northern Europe, a whole nother kettle of fish than the riders are normally used to. You don't often see a peloton split to pieces like this, and the racers from Belgium and Holland especially, they face these conditions constantly during their amateur and professional careers. They have a real affinity for the crosswind battles.
Well, this is a very serious move now, Bob. We're talking about 21 riders. They've got 1 minute and 40 seconds advantage over the yellow jersey group, and that is an awful long way back. Tête de la course, by the way, means the head of the bike race. Those are the second and third group on the road. They're about to come together, but they're looking now for almost 2 minutes to pull themselves back together. We're going to see now a reinforcing of the group, and the fact that there's only one team car behind. You see that yellow car there? That's the neutral service vehicle. That's a vehicle that looks after everybody who might have an incident at the moment. But what it does mean, Bob, is there's an awful lot more riders left behind this bike race.
Big groups all over the road today. Here's the third group out on the road with our overnight race leader. Bit of a tricky moment there, and that is Gustav Larsen in the yellow jersey from Vacances Soleil. That's the second group just in front of the race leader's jersey, but they're 1 minute and 35 seconds. Ideally, what you do is you get these two groups together, get a couple of teams with all the riders they have left to go to the front and do a concerted organized chase. Otherwise, that minute and 35 could turn into 3 minutes by the end of this bike race.
Well, that's the important thing that you make a note of there, Bob. It's a question of getting yourself organized, but not that easy when everybody's just basically scrambling to try and survive in a situation like this, because the scramble is at the back end. Over to the right-hand side, there's not very much of a room there to get yourself into the move, and we can see at the tête de la course, Sylvain Chavanel there, the French national champion. Now, Omega Pharma Lotto have done an absolutely superb job here, Bob. Look at this. Tom Boonen, Sylvain Chavanel, Levi Leipheimer and Nicolas Mas. They've got 4 riders in that group. Maxime Montfort, the only rider to get in there for Radio Shack Nissan Trek, but then 2 riders from Team Sky, Bradley Wiggins and Geraint Thomas. Valverde and Rojas are both in there for Movistar. A little bit further down, you've got 2 riders from Astana, Gavazzi and Kirozlovsky in there too. Vacances Soleil only got 1 rider in there. They won't be too happy with that. Garmin Barracuda have managed to get themselves a 2 rider in, Andreas Clear, and of course Van Mark, who had a very good start to the season.
Also TJ Van Garderen in this front group, heads up running for the 2 young men from the BMC squad, and Levi Leipheimer, some of our pre-race favorites. This will be a hard left-hand turn for the peloton. Now they'll have a direct tailwind, maybe a chance for the whole groups to come back together, but when the crosswinds blow, that's when you have these big splits in the field. But for TJ Van Garderen and Levi Leipheimer, ideal racing so far today.
Ideal racing if you're in the leading group of 21 riders, and let's not forget that TJ Van Garderen has a very good teammate in that leading group with him as well, and that of course is Taylor Phinney. The race split up over 3 or 4 different very serious groups, but more importantly, in a couple of kilometers time there's going to be a sprint bonus point. Now the first 3 riders to cross that line will get 3 seconds, 2 seconds and 1 second taken off their overall time at the moment in the race. Now that could be extremely important, Bob, for a certain Bradley Wiggins.
Bradley Wiggins just 1 second behind overnight race leader Gustav Larsson. If everything came back together and a sprinter that wasn't within 10 seconds of the race lead after the time trial, and Bradley Wiggins finished in the first 2 places of the intermediate sprint, he would get that yellow jersey off of the shoulders of the race leader Gustav Larsson, and that is a serious prize to have for any bike racer to lead any of these great stage races in Europe. Bradley Wiggins, we'll see in the sprint point if he's interested in that, or he will conserve his strength for the rest of the week of racing here at Paris-Nice.
And watch out for TJ Van Garderen, because he actually started the day only looking for a mere 9 seconds, and Levi Leipheimer looking for 4 seconds. So I would say those riders in that leading group of 21 at the moment will take the sprint extremely seriously. You may well even see Tom Boonen coming out of the pack to try and defend the position of his man Levi Leipheimer, because Leipheimer at the moment is putting himself into a very nice situation to try and build a buffer over the rest of the main favorites before we get down towards the finish. 500 meters now to go to the finish of the sprint point, the first sprint point of the day.
2 Garmin men making the breakaway there. Sepp Van Mark, Andreas Clear. Van Mark putting his name up amongst the best riders in the world with a huge win early season in Belgium at Het Nieuwsblad. That's a great ride, and he's also in the breakaway here. This is serious racing.
Right now, 50 kilometers to go, 31 miles. They're starting to warm the sprint up very rapidly, and this is going to be Bradley Wiggins in the white jersey, the British national champion. Valverde over on the left-hand side. Well, I didn't see the line there, Bob, but I've got a funny feeling that Bradley Wiggins came out of the pack there and got himself a 3-second time bonus.
Bradley Wiggins, no question about it. He's serious about getting that leader's yellow jersey, easily outdistancing Alejandro Valverde and John de Genkolb. Heads up riding by the Brit on the Sky team.
Being very attentive. He's got a great pedigree of coming into this bike race from a track background. He knows how to be in the right place at the right time. Paris-Nice is getting very serious. Tomorrow, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with Stage 3 of Paris-Nice. It'll be a tough day with 2 very difficult climbs down towards the end. Tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. Well, rejoining the leaders, Bob, this is now starting to look like a very serious situation. 1 minute and 45 seconds advantage over a group containing the yellow jersey, the overnight leader Gustav Larsson at 45 kilometers to go. That's about 27 miles of racing left.
Taylor Phinney just pulling off the front there of the group in the black and red of BMC, reefing on the bars, taking huge turns of speeds at the front of this leading group in the peloton. Roommates and teammates with TJ Van Garderen for this week of racing. There is Taylor Phinney Finney. Only 2 men come through. He goes right back to the front, rotates around. He really wants this break to succeed, putting huge pressure on the chasers.
A lot of pressure on the chasers, but I have to say the 2 American pre-race contenders, Levi Leipheimer and TJ Van Garderen. What's going on here, Bob?
Bit of a problem for Gaetan Bill of the Lotto squad. He's trying to take off his warmer thermal jacket. It gets caught in the rear brake. That is going to cost you some time.
Well, let's have a look. Just happened at the back end of the main field. Look how that locks up the back wheel there. You've got to be a top professional bike rider to keep your machine up like that. This can happen almost any day out on the open road, and very, very often these guys, they survive. He should get himself back into the main field because he was actually in the yellow jersey group, not part of that 21-man leading group. We just mentioned, Bob, the 2 American contenders in the leading group of 21. Levi Leipheimer, there he is in the pale blue jersey, Omega Pharma Lotto, TJ Van Garderen. But actually, there are 6 American riders in this Paris-Nice event this year.
And 3 of them are in the breakaway. Taylor Phinney, TJ Van Garderen, and Levi Leipheimer. That is great riding by the Americans in the Paris-Nice this year. JJ Rojas, the rider from Movistar, just touching the front of the peloton there, the front group, along with his teammate Alejandro Valverde in the dark blue with the white stripe along the side.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Bob. I think 1 or 2 riders in this event are making a very serious tactical mistake. Yes, we've got the 4 riders in here from Omega Pharma Lotto. We've got Bonan, Chavanel, Leipheimer and Mize, but I have to think that giving Bradley Wiggins an advantage like this, that's him in the white jersey there, the British professional road racing champion, 3 times an Olympic gold medalist as well, giving him an advantage on a day like this, when this morning he said in the press room, he said, look guys, I've got the best form of my life. He was upset to lose out yesterday. Today they're giving him a big advantage.
He was very upset losing that time trial yesterday. He said he had never pedaled faster in his life. That is incredible considering his results as a professional. So when he says he's on the best form of his life, you have to understand that he's going very well. Perhaps now the race favorite to win Paris-Nice overall, if that holds true.
Oh, well, this is looking back now. You can see the yellow jersey over on the left-hand side. Bob, just looking at this group now, I would have to say they've lost their emphasis. I think they've lost their desire to chase back to that leading group, and that very often happens, especially on a day like this. You're getting buffeted by the wind all of the time. Then all of a sudden, when you see that gap locked in at 145 all of the time, not changing, not getting bigger, not getting smaller, you tend to raise up the white flag of surrender.
The riders that are following, just exactly the way you said, Paul, will chase for a certain amount of kilometers, and then they'll start to think about the days to come and the season to come, and they will give up the ghost. Meanwhile, when you're in the front group like these riders, there's Valverde pulling through with JJ Rojas and Geraint Thomas on his wheel. For these riders, everything to gain and nothing to lose. Hammer down to the finish line, and the miles are cascading down. Huge average speed for the front group.
Just confirmation there. You see Bradley Wiggins getting himself that 3-second time bonus, which in the race at the moment, if we were to stop, that would put him into the overall lead. You might also just notice he's got the green jersey underneath. Well, he was second on the stage yesterday, so he's actually second in the green jersey points classification for the most consistent rider, and he may well move up quite a long way in that competition here this afternoon. But right now we're looking at 21 riders with 1 minute and 45 seconds lead. Welcome back here with the leading group of 21 riders. 4 of those riders from Omega Pharma Lotto, but maybe more importantly, Tom Bonan is in this leading group, returning to the form that he seemed to have had back in 2005 and 2006, where in fact he won himself 3 stages of Paris-Nice in 06. That's why today he's our Road ID athlete profile.
Tom Bonan now has arrived in the real big time of Belgian cycling. A little bit of a wobble, Bonan has done it again. As they come up to the line, it's Bonan and McEwen, and Tom gets it. Tom Bonan is an absolute powerhouse.
2005 was obviously my best year, and so far I won the World Championship. I think I could have won already the green jersey 2005. I broke my kneecap that year. It was a good season, and I did a few years like that. Back in those days, we had a good team, very good team. Sprints was also a little bit different than it is right now. The last 2 years were a little bit unlucky. Had some bad injuries, which took a lot of time to heal.
That's Bonan who's gone down, and he really has seen the wrong side of the Tour de France. Been a rough ride for him.
I think right now everything's where it's supposed to be. My knee problem solved. The legs are equal strength again. Also my wrist is healed, so I think maybe this season will be very interesting for me again. took me a year to be riding good again, you know, to be able to do stuff that I was able to do before. I know what happened, you know. I think at the Spring Classics I won Gent-Wevelgem, was fourth in Flanders with absolutely no comparisons with the years before. I mean, I was still able to do that with no condition like I had before. Now I feel a lot better, so I think I will be also a little bit more tough on myself. If there's no results, it will be a very, very disappointing thing. But you have to be fair. I mean, these things take time, man. You can't expect to be out 6 months and then just come back and win races. If it's like that, it was so easy, then everybody would have done it.
It's now Tom Boonen who's going to accelerate. It's Boonen all the way to the line. Here comes Tom Boonen. It's Vilas on the right-hand side who's trying to go for the victory, but Boonen takes it. That is his 20th stage win in the Tour of Qatar.
I'm still able to do this best sprint I ever did on my tests and the results and everything, so I don't think it will be a problem.
Tom Boonen sends out a strong message to the rest of the peloton for 2012.
Well, Bob, when you look at this man, he really is a class act, isn't he? But it's not just class, it's character that's brought him back to the top of the sport.
One of the biggest stars in all of athletic and sports in Belgium, Tom Boonen. He was the sprint king for a number of years, also a great classics rider, and experiencing a renaissance right now, right in the front in the light blue jersey with the black shorts. That's big Tom Boonen. One of the best men also in the crosswinds. He loves these conditions.
Oh, this is Damiano Cunego, 111. He's the leader of Team Lampre ISD. He's at the back, front wheel puncture for him. You see how all of a sudden the teammate stopped immediately? That's because the team car must be a long way back.
There's the team car now pulling up, but Damiano Cunego not wanting to wait for that, gets a wheel from his teammate, and that is a very slow bike change. Generally speaking, the rider should let the mechanic take care of that. And Damiano Cunego, a little bit of panic there. It's surprising to see from the KG veteran and very successful Italian racer, Damiano Cunego.
Well, a man of his experience, Bobby, should have had that front wheel out and back in very quickly indeed. And as you say, probably a little bit of nervousness because of these crosswinds which are buffeting the riders. But more importantly, look at the distance to go now. 37 kilometers. We're now getting to 22 miles to go, and that gap is stretching out to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I'd have to say that leading group of 21 riders are going to start to feel a little bit more comfortable and start to think about the taste of victory.
Well, there's a Lotto rider on the front of this second group. He is chasing. They don't have a single rider in the front group. Also Lampre without any riders. But now what they will do is wait for Damiano Cunego. That will slow the chasers down. And the gap now 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Under 40 kilometers, less than 25 miles of racing to go. Just 36.5 Ks.
Yeah, well, Bob, just looking at this group, it is quite funny. I was listening to Brent Buchwalter this morning, one of the riders from BMC. He says the best thing about being in France today is if you've managed to got yourself a kite.
Kite flying, yes, would definitely be a fun pastime, but for the bike racers, it is a real battle, a real death race here to the finish line. This will take the chances away from everybody in the peloton except for a very select group of riders. TJ Van Garderen, Levi Leipheimer, Bradley Wiggins, now looming large in the overall standings of Paris-Nice with a great chance to win overall now. That's a great move by Geraint Thomas to take the jersey from Bradley Wiggins. He doesn't even have to get out of his aerodynamic profile to come through. Hard work being done by the teammates of both Geraint Thomas and TJ Van Garderen, by Taylor Feeney and Geraint Thomas.
Well, Geraint Thomas, yes, in the dark black jersey there. He's going to go back to the team car. He will look after Bradley Wiggins. But I have to say, Geraint Thomas, coming from Wales, already a world champion on the track, a very talented rider. Like many of the riders this year, they're going to have to make some serious decisions. Do they go to the Tour de France, or do they skip the Tour de France and think about the Olympic Games in London 2012?
There's John Degenkolb on the Project 1T4I squad coming to the front, a very fast sprinter along with Tom Boonen, perhaps the fastest man in this leading group. Away 2 riders from the Garmin squad, including that man, Sepp Van Mark, great bike racer from Belgium, also with a big win and hit Nieuwsblad early in the season already.
Yeah, on that brand new Garmin Barracuda squad, as we see their second group on the road trying to get themselves organized. These are the teams who've missed out here this afternoon. They're trying to bridge back a gap of 2 minutes and 20 seconds before the finish. Looking down on the River Loire, the longest river in France, a good chance for us to remind ourselves that Tirreno Adriatico starts on the other side of Europe tomorrow on Universal Sports. And Bob, that's a little bit more a race for the sprinters than this year's Paris-Nice.
Tirreno Adriatico down in Italy, one of the preparation races for the first monument of the season, Milano-San Remo, along with this race, Paris-Nice. But like you said, Tirreno for the sprinters, Paris-Nice for the overall contenders for not just Paris-Nice, but all the big stage races throughout the year.
So looking here at the leading group of 21 riders. In that white jersey, by the way, that's the American rider TJ Van Garderen, the man with the Dutch name, but certainly very much an American. The white jersey for the best young rider, the rider who is 25 years in age and younger at the start of any season. And that's a title I think he would very easily take down to Nice, especially with this breakaway group this afternoon. But Bob, I think he's thinking of a little bit higher step on the podium this year.
He would love to win Paris-Nice. He's won the best young rider in a number of stage races in his career. He's looking to go a couple of better and perhaps be at the top step. And he's done the right move today, the breakaway at 2:20, and perhaps going to stay away to the finish. This is a very dangerous move for a number of our pre-race favorites.
Well, I'll tell you what, the main field have certainly not given up the chase here, because you can see one or two riders starting to slip back. But Damiano Cunego, who we saw have that mechanical incident just a few moments ago, Bob, he's had a very, very hard ride to get himself back into this chasing group.
Damiano Cunego, called the Little Prince in the Italian peloton, Il Piccolo Principe, in the pink and blue jersey there of Lamprey, coming back into the second group by himself. I wonder if some of his teammates were not spent in a very desperate chase for Cunego to get back into contention in this bike race.
Well, it's the French team Sour-Sojazun on the front end of the main field here, trying to whip up the pace, trying to bring back that gap from 2 minutes and 20 seconds, because this could be a Paris-Nice winning gap if we stop the race as we speak here. Because all of the big favourites we talked about, Bob, Tony Martin, Gustav Larsen, Andreas Kloden, they have missed out on the group here this afternoon. There is the yellow jersey trying to survive on a nasty day like this. But one man we expected to see in the crosswinds, of course, is Big Thor Hushovd, the man who formerly was a champion of the world, formerly rode for Garmin Cervelo as it was before it changed its name to Garmin Barracuda. He too seems to have missed all of the action today.
Well, now for the first time we are seeing that organized chase. Both Lotto and Sauer on the front of the second chasing group, and that might spell doom for the riders in the front, although the gap is still at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. If Sauer comes to the front, and they do have an overall contender for Paris-Nice in Jerome Capel, their team leader, he's already won a stage race earlier in the year, so this might be the moment when the peloton gets organized and is able to chase down this front group. There is Sylvain Chavanel leading the pace-making at the moment.
Well, I'm surprised that so many of those teams actually, Bob, missing out, because there's groups of riders in this group of 21. Omega Pharma Lotto have made the best operation so far with 4 riders present in that group. Sky, we're looking here at Bradley Wiggins in that white jersey. They've done well to have 2 riders in the leading group. A little bit further down, BMC Racing, they've got 2 riders in the group as well, Taylor Finney and TJ Van Garderen. And of course, Garmin Barracuda with Andreas Clear and Sepp Van Mark. Important to have teammates in a breakaway like this, because you can push yourself just that little bit more and not keep anything back in the gas tank.
And for a rider like Tom Bonen, who wants the stage wins here in Paris-Nice, desperate for stage win and to reestablish himself as one of the biggest stars in the sport, this would be a great feather in his cap to get a stage win here. And of course, if he doesn't have to race against the whole peloton, the odds increase the closer they get to the finish line for Tom Bonen. So he'll put at least one of his teammates on the front. Sylvain Chavanel's been rotating through, and of course Nicolas Maes, his other teammate from Omega Quickstep, also doing big turns of work on the front. They really want to keep this breakaway together. Then there is only one man perhaps capable of matching the speed from this breakaway of Tom Bonen, and that is De Genkolb, the rider from the Project 1-4 TI squad. He's also a fast sprinter, so look for a battle royale in the finishing streets in the town of Orléans.
Well, it's going to be very difficult to pull back this 21-man group now, Bob, because at 30 kilometers to go, 18 miles of racing, it is still locked in at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. The reason why Team Lotto have come to the front here is not only because they want to pull back that gap, but they've also got a very good sprinter in their midst, and he goes by the name of Greg Henderson from New Zealand. But they're going to have to do something special. They're going to need more than one team to chase down this leading group of riders. Just as a matter of interest, by the way, Omega Pharma Lotto, Bob, so far this season have crossed the finishing line or won stages on 20 separate occasions. That's not bad for just coming into the beginning of March.
We're just in the first week of March. They already have more wins than they had all of last year. That would be the Quick Step squad. Of course, Omega and Quick Step coming together to form one Belgian super team in the offseason. Gone from their numbers, however, is Philippe Gilbert. He was the star of the Omega program last year. He is on BMC Racing, the American team that will be competing in Tirreno Adriatico starting tomorrow.
Well, talking about men who would like this race to survive, this breakaway of 21 riders to go to the front, that man we're looking at there, JJ Rojas, a very good sprinter in his own right. And of course, Vicioso from Team Katusha, a fast man. Geraint Thomas, on occasions, can come out of the gap very, very quickly. But in a situation like this, Bob, is it going to be a little bit more tactical and looking after your teammates?
Oh, absolutely. Geraint Thomas will theoretically be doing the maximum amount of work he's capable of to keep Bradley Wiggins off the front, away from the chase group with Gustav Larsson in it. Bradley Wiggins is the virtual leader of Paris-Nice at the moment.
Well, he certainly is, but he's got a long way to go. He's got 18 miles to go, but that gap is starting to stretch once again for the 21 leaders. It's now up to 2 minutes and 25 seconds advantage.
Head Sweats, the world leader in performance headwear, is a proud sponsor of the Epic Cycle. Check out our new Super Duty collection featuring superior moisture management and perspiration technology. Use the code PARISNICE at headsweats.com and receive 30% off your next online purchase on all Head Sweats headwear. Restrictions apply.
As we get slowly but surely to the town of the Maid of Orleans, Joan of Arc, the race is really starting to hot up now. The leading group of riders at 27 kilometers to go, just inside 27 kilometers to go, 17 miles of racing, 2 minutes and 25 seconds is the advantage. The two riders are sharing turns at the front there. Bradley Wiggins in the white jersey, the British professional road racing champion, and his teammate from Wales, Geraint Thomas. Well, this is John Degenkolb at the back here, Bob, and it looks to me as if he's had a slight mechanical problem. And again, you can see the moisture starting to appear on the roads of Paris-Nice here this afternoon, getting thrown up onto the lens of our camera.
John Degenkolb being dropped off the front group, way off the leaders now. He was just in that group. Coming back to the team car, getting the sticky brake adjustment. Not sure if that's 100% within the rules. Now John Degenkolb trying to get back into the front group, but really struggling there, just off the tail end of our lead group of 21 riders, formerly now 20 riders, unless Degenkolb can catch back up into the lead.
Well, if he does, he's a serious candidate to get himself a stage victory this afternoon, but it's not over, bar the shouting. There he is, onto the back end of that group, making it 21 lead riders once again. The gap still locked in, Bob, at 2 minutes and 25 seconds. I'd have to say that this leading group of 21 will start to be feeling a little bit more confident, but they can't shy back because, you know, the main field will continue to accelerate on the running down towards the finish because a lot of big names have missed out on this group in this early morning breakaway where the race got absolutely splintered to pieces because of the savage crosswinds.
Bona now coming to the front with a strong pull. A little bit of hesitation in the leading group of 21 riders now. There's Bradley Wiggins looking over shoulder. Who's going to pull through? That's Alejandro Valverde. He will do the work, but Tom Bonen's still motivated to keep this breakaway organized. Taylor Phinney right on his wheel, but a little bit of disorganization and uncooperative behavior in the breakaway here, the lead group, and that gives the advantage back to the chasing peloton. The gap is at 2 minutes and 25 seconds. All they need is another 10, 15, 20 seconds, and then that will break the tether, and the group chasing will never catch up. But they are right at the limit now with 25 kilometers to go, about 14 miles. Right there, that is the breaking point, the tipping point, about to go over to the breakaway or the peloton. These are the most desperate kilometers of this bike race today.
Well, sorry about the little bit of picture breakup. It does freeze up every now and again with the new era of digital technology. That was Louis Vistre of Vacances Soleil at the back of the group trying to get some information. Teammate of the overnight leader, Gustav Larsson, as we see the organization appearing once again in this leading group of 21. But Bob, that's a very good point that you make there. These riders, they're trying to win Paris-Nice here this afternoon. Some riders are thinking about trying to win the stage. Tom Bonen, Geraint Thomas, JJ Rojas, they are trying to conserve a little bit of energy while you think about at 25 kilometers to go. The other riders in this breakaway group are trying to think, let's keep this advantage, let's conserve as much of this advantage as possible. Then all of a sudden, psychologically, you see riders missing turns, sitting at the back of the group, and it's not a lot of fun. It's like dragging along a big anchor.
Yes, certainly it's really discouraging once you get a little bit winded, a little bit exhausted, to have some riders not doing any of the contributing to the pacemaking, to have them sitting on, taking advantage of your work. You have to be really motivated to continue to bury yourself for, theoretically, your team leader. A rider like Taylor Phinney is doing that currently. He never misses a turn. He's pulled through every time. He's doing an incredible amount of work for his team leader, TJ Van Garderen, who had a great a great stage 1 time trial yesterday.
Yeah, you've got to say, a lot of riders, they will just sacrifice themselves in a situation like this. He's probably been given the nod, Taylor Phinney. Just bury yourself here this afternoon. It's part of the learning process. It's part of the suffering process. It's part of laying down foundations to try and ride well in the classic one-day races that will come a little later in the season after Paris-Nice. But I have to say, the big change for me, Bob, during the winter season, of course, was Levi Leipheimer. For many, many years, he was on that same squad with Johan Brunel. Johan Brunel, the manager of Lance Armstrong for many years, also the manager of Alberto Contador. But during this winter season, Levi Leipheimer decided he wanted to switch teams, and he moved across to a mega squad, Omega Pharma Lotto.
Well, sometimes a change in scenery does you well, and that's certainly been the case so far this year for Levi Leipheimer, already with a big win in the Tour of San Luis down in South America, and coming to Paris-Nice with great form. He's done well in Paris-Nice before, but he had an exceptional opening time trial, third on the stage, and he started the stage just 4 seconds slower than the Gustav Larsen who won the time trial, but now he finds himself second in virtual competition in the overall standing. So Levi Leipheimer, that'll be a great story to follow throughout this week's racing.
Yeah, Bob, I might have said Omega Pharma Lotto there. Obviously, I meant Omega Pharma Quickstep. There's been so many changes during this winter months that it'll take us a couple of races to get ourselves used to all the new teams that have been formed at the top end of the sport of professional cycling. Now, as we look down at these riders who are getting now down to 13 miles to go, they're still holding on to 2 minutes 25 seconds. Back with the leading group of riders now, getting closely but surely down to that little gap now of 12.5 miles. Now, this is Spilak who's got off the front here from, well, he's not got off the front, he's gone straight off the back. And again, Bob, I can only suspect that is a mechanical incident.
Simon Spilak, interestingly, awarded the Tour of Romandy. Here is a look at Spilak's flat tire, change of the rear wheel, a little bit more reasonable than Damiano Cunego, and handily back into the front group. So good chase by Spilak. He was awarded the Tour of Romandy title after the disqualification of Alejandro Valverde. Spilak finishing second in Tour of Romandy a couple years ago, but because Valverde's results were nullified, Spilak was given the victory, and we will be showing that on NBC Sports Network in the end of at the very beginning of April this year.
Well, look at the long length of those riders, and also, Bob, starting to see a little bit of moisture appear now. Fortunately, over the last 2 kilometers, I've looked at the race handbook, which has told me that the running towards the finish line, there's hardly any corners at all, so it should be a fairly good sprint. And I would have to say that fairly shortly, we're just looking there at one of the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep, having a quick chat with the team management. The smaller rider in that pale blue jersey, got to get used to him, haven't we, really, in the new colors there of Levi Leipheimer. He started the day in 3rd place in the overall standings, and with the time bonuses out on the course, he should, if we were to stop the race right now, be in 2nd place in the overall standings of this race, just ahead of TJ Van Garderen, who theoretically should move up into 3rd place tonight.
List of the riders in the breakaway: TJ Van Garderen, Taylor Phinney, the Americans on the BMC squad, Spilak, Angel Vicioso, a very fast sprinter himself, John Degenkolb back in the front group, but Degenkolb maybe suffering, maybe unwilling to contribute to the pacemaking. He's trying to sit on and not do too much work.
Andreas Clear just sitting at the back there, the German rider on Garmin Barracuda, and he's one of those riders who can produce a very interesting finish. A couple of years ago, I remember him winning the Ghent-Wevelgem single-day race in the northern part of Europe, in Belgium, on a very nasty day just like this. Bob, it is a cold day today, 46 degrees Fahrenheit at the start, but when you start to get this moisture coming in at the end of a stage like this, 115 miles of racing, it starts to toughen up the muscles, to tetanize the muscles, if you like, to make it a little bit difficult to respond.
Most certainly. A sluggish physical response to changing weather conditions make for a very tough bike race. But what makes it really hard is the crosswinds, and they have been howling on today's stage.
Yes, as they cross over the River Loire here, leaving behind them the town of Jargeau, they will start to circumnavigate Orléans and start to pick up a headwind, which is going to make it that little bit tougher. And just for the historians out there, by the way, this was one of the first big moves that the French started to make at the end of the 100 Years' War, and this is where Joan of Arc actually assembled the French troops for the re-assault of Orléans, which they started to take back. So this is the right-hand turn now. You can see, Bob, they will start to pick up a little bit of a headwind. Now that could go to the advantage of the chasers. There is Jargeau, the département number 45. And of course, this is where Joan of Arc raised her banner and marched forward towards Orléans to take it back away from the French, from the British troops. Interestingly enough, as she was scaling the walls, her helmet was hit by a rock, and the helmet protected her, and the rock was split into two. And just amazing to think the reputation that lady built up at just 19 years of age.
And I'm trying to remind myself of who it was that burnt her at the stake.
I think it would have been, well, it was the British, I do admit, but the magistrate who sat on that court was a magistrate by the name of Mr. Cochon, which means pig in French, by the way.
Those were desperate times in France, desperate moments now for the leading group. This is the tipping point. 2 minutes and 20-second advantage inside of 20 kilometers or less than 12 miles to go. And unless the peloton picks it up dramatically, this group is going to stay away and perhaps lose their chance. Anybody that's not in this group to win Paris-Nice in a few days' time when we get down to the Côte d'Azur.
Well, TJ Van Garderen, the American rider there in their white jersey at the front, he's keeping the tempo nice and high for him. He's not actually thinking about winning the stage here this afternoon, Bob. He's thinking about getting a big time buffer over everybody else. And of course, I'd have to say one of the big losers this afternoon is maybe not Gustav Larsson, the overall leader at the start of the day, but Tony Martin, last year the defending champion.
Tony Martin is going to have a very tough time defending his championship from last year unless this group gets caught by the chasers. The gap just came down by 2 seconds, but it took a full kilometer to do that. So it's a little bit of a second gained, a second loss for the lead group. They're still holding on to a big advantage. Another loser on today's stage so far is Andreas Kloden. Yanni Brockovich not there, or Thomas Vogler. They've all missed out.
So the main field now crosses over the River Loire, and they're starting to edge into that advantage, but not really by very much. Just a couple of seconds here or a couple of seconds there. The speed is on in the peloton, and they'll be hoping to try and pull back that 21-man leading group down towards the end. Theoretically, it is possible, Bob, but when you look at the body language of those riders in that leading 21 compared to the men in the main field, I think it's game over here this afternoon, and I have a feeling that leading group of 21 is going to succeed. But who is the man going to come out of that group as the winner?
Well, Tom Boonen is on form. He's made the right move. He has 3 teammates. It would be very tough for anybody to beat Tom Boonen on today's stage if the status quo remains the same to the finish line. What's interesting, a number of riders in this break, they have one objective. That's to gain time. The other riders like the Genkolb and Bono, they have a totally different objective. That's to win the stage. But if they stay away, both objectives are achieved. That's why this breakaway is so dangerous.
Well, there's a lot of big sprinters, so don't discount Geraint Thomas. I'd have to say JJ Rojas is a very fast man in the group for Spain, the champion of Spain. Taylor Phinney on his day can have a good crack at a sprint finish, as well as Angel Vicioso. There's a lot of big sprinters are now starting to think in that leading group of 21. Today, they've got a chance of victory on stage 2 of Paris-Nice. Inside of 15 kilometers to go to the finish. That's 9.5 miles of racing left, and the leading group of 21 riders still with about 2.25 minutes advantage. The disorganization, though, for me, Bob, is starting to appear in that leading group of 21 riders. There's confirmation of the distance to the finish, but they've got to keep themselves working. They've got to keep making this pace-making at the front of the peloton. Otherwise, that advantage they've battled for, that 2.25 minutes, can disappear in the last few kilometers.
JJ Rojas pulling through, a very fast sprinter. Perhaps he is fancying the chances of his team captain, Alejandro Valverde, perhaps not on today's stage against Tom Boonen. A little bit of a meeting there between Chavanel and Boonen. Maybe they're getting ready to think about the finale, in which case they don't think that this chasing group will ever come back. 2 minutes and 17 seconds in the last 9 miles of racing. Virtually impossible to catch the best riders in the world in the front group.
That orange jerseyed rider there was Lorenz Tendam from Team Rabobank. Now they are deciding to mix it up a little bit at the front. They've course, got Mark Renshaw looking to open up his winning account so far this season. He moved across this year in the transfer season to Rabobank to be the lead sprinter instead of being the lead out man for a certain Mark Cavendish, now trying to sprint in his own right.
Let's not forget about Sepp Van Mark, the Garmin Barracuda rider, who has made a great raid on today's stage by finding this front group. He got the better of Ton Bonen just a few days ago in Het Nieuwsblad, the first big race of the Belgian season. That is the semi-classic. There he is, just giving up to his rain jacket, taking that off. He'll give it to the team car for the maximum aerodynamic advantage in the sprint.
Well, I was just stopping there a moment, Bob, to see if he had any chat from the team manager there to give him an idea, a few tips on how to run in towards the finish. Well, I'm not sure if your ears are as good as mine, Bob. I'll have to get some new batteries for the hearing aid, I think, this afternoon. But he's probably explaining to him the run in towards the finish. He's going to have to count on Andreas Clear. He's told him that inside of the last 1.5 kilometers, there's a slight rise up towards the finish. To hold back, wait for the last few moments before you go for that sprint, because if you lead out the sprint too early, you will fade on the run in towards the line.
Well, you can see the riders in this group licking their chops, hoping to stay away to the finish line. They have done a great last 60 kilometers of this race. They found the front group and they have distanced themselves from the chasers. A lot of big names in the chase group, a lot of teams missing out. They continue to chase, but that gap at 2 minutes and 15 seconds, that's almost impossible to catch in the last 10 kilometers of the bike race.
Look at all those riders over to the right-hand side there in their green jerseys and the green helmets. That's a Team Europe car. That is the team of Thomas Voeckler, again one of the big losers here this afternoon. Had a tough time trial yesterday. Mark Renshaw riding towards the front end of the pack. A lot of riders this afternoon will not be very happy at probably being placed in the wrong part of the main field when the race actually split to pieces. That's why, Bob, when you want to be a professional bike rider, I say it every week, I say it every year, every month, you have to ride at the front of the bike race, because that's where it happens. There's Thomas Voeckler just getting out of the saddle. You can see the red, white and blue bands around his shorts there, indicating a former national champion of France.
Frank Schleck just coming through the picture there in front of the Euskaltel rider in orange. Frank Schleck, his brother Andy Schleck, they had horrible opening time trials and have missed out on the big move of Paris-Nice in recent years, not just on today's stage. And this man also missing out, Gustav Larsson. He will lose his jersey at the end of today's race.
Well, at least he's had the yellow jersey. At least we know that Gustav Larsson has been in the professional bike race here this afternoon. In fact, looking through his palmarès, his pedigree, we had to go back to see his last big international win was the final stage of the Giro d'Italia, and that was a time trial back in 2010.
And the rain now buffeting the riders again, as it did in yesterday's stage towards the end of the proceedings. That will really discourage the chasers. And we saw a quick shot of Gustav Larsson. Very discouraged look on his face.
Well, Levi Leipheimer not scared to do some pacemaking in front. He's got a two-pronged attack and two reasons for working here. First of all, to try and build himself a buffer over everybody else in the bike race to try and win Paris-Nice at the end of the week. He's a little bit behind the man in the white jersey there. You might just notice on the side of his jersey, all the riders in Team Sky have got their actual name written down the side of their jerseys, but Bradley Wiggins' nickname is Wiggo, and that's what it's got written down the side of his jersey just on the left-hand side, just to help us identify the fact that it is Wiggo who's at the front of the field.
Wiggins, a special rider with a special jersey. He has his Champion of Great Britain thermal jersey on because such a miserable day the riders are facing on today's stage. Not just the rain, but also the crosswinds. And once the rain is starting to fall, we'll see what the chasers can do. This is the front group. Everything to race for here for these riders. Everything to be gained on today's stage.
Well, we're talking about possible winners there. Number 83, you might just have caught a quick glimpse of Francesco Gavazzi, a very good sprinter for Team Astana. Everyone now starting to get a little bit twitchy. Watch out for the sprinters, because this is the time where they'll start to tighten the Velcro straps on their shoes. They'll start to make sure that everything's ready for the sprint down towards the line. Geraint Thomas not thinking about a victory here this afternoon. I think he's more concerned about conserving as much time as possible. Levi Leipheimer already with that victory this year in the Tour of San Luis down in Argentina. He's looking in fine form. And again, Bob, when you change teams during the winter months, you want to show your teammates, guys, I'm actually here, I'm ready, and I'm tough.
There's a little bit of a conversation between Valverde and his teammate JJ Rojas. Omega Pharma Quick-Step, the dominant team in cycling so far this season, and they have 4 men in this breakaway, so they're dominating the proceedings on today's stage as well. A lot of advantages. Sylvain Chavanel and Levi Leipheimer, 2 of the protected riders, the overall riders for Quick-Step on today's stage, Omega Quick-Step, as well as Tony Martin missing out. However, you have Tom Boonen looking for a stage win.
Well, you do, but I have to say, watch out, Tom Boonen, because Sepp van Mark is the man that led him smartly to the line in a race called Het Nieuwsblad just recently at the start of this month. And in fact, he's a very good young sprinter on Garmin Barracuda. He has the advantage of having in the breakaway with him an experienced professional bike rider, and that, of course, Andreas Clear. Andreas Clear turned professional back in 1996. He might not have won very many races, but he did in 2003 win Wevelgem. It's good to have an experienced bike rider alongside you, especially when you're a young developing athlete.
Omega Quick-Step have won a lot of races already. One team looking for results, and they've done a great job in Paris-Nice so far. That's the BMC team. 2 men in this breakaway, TJ Van Garderen and Taylor Phinney.
Well, the 21 men leading this bike race now, moving up to 10 kilometers to go. That's about 12 minutes of racing. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we should be charging into the finish in Orléans. Getting right down to the last few kilometers, inside of 7 kilometers to go now. 4 miles of racing. You might just have noticed in the shadows of the Cathedral of Orléans there, a little chat going on between Sylvain Chavanel and Tom Boonen.
Setting up the sprint perhaps for Tom Boonen. 1 sprinter stage in Paris-Nice this year. That's why it doesn't surprise me that so many sprinters have made the front group. They came to the start line ready to race. Of course, unpredictably was the crosswinds that ripped the peloton to pieces. The gap is 2 minutes and 10 seconds with only 6.5 kilometers to go, or about 4 miles. Virtually impossible for the peloton to catch these guys.
Well, Alejandro Valverde is the rider just in front of Tom Boonen, but behind him we're starting to see a rather interesting move coming forward by Sepp van Mark from Garmin Barracuda. Yeah, that was a quick shout there. I think that was Tom Boonen shouting to Nicolas Mees to come forward and start to get themselves organised. They are in a very good situation, Omega Pharma Quick-Step, because they got 4 riders in that leading group. Maas in there with Chavanel. Leipheimer, a little bit difficult for Leipheimer to lead out, Bob, because he's such a small rider. You might as well not ride behind him because you'll be getting the wind right in your face. Chavanel is at the front, followed there by Taylor Phinney, the American rider on Team BMC. 3rd place in that white jersey, a little bit deceptive, TJ Van Garderen. But the speed now is really starting to wind up.
And that is Sylvain Chavanel doing a serious turn of speed on the front of the group. Bradley Wiggins, 4th wheel. And this is Tom Boonen asking for his teammate to come forward, and that is Nicolas Maas, just a man just in front of Tom Boonen. They're both in the turquoise green and black jerseys of the Omega Quick-Step team, yelling at his teammate Maas to come forward and perhaps help him beat who might be very well the man to challenge him, Sepp van Mark.
5 kilometers to go now, 3 miles of racing left. Very, very nervous and tense moment for these bike riders. Almost difficult to wonder who is going to try and attack the stronghold of the sprinters at the front of the main field. I can see Alejandro Valverde in that lime green jersey. He's thinking of his sprinter, JJ Rojas, the man who is champion of Spain and a very fast turn of speed when it comes down towards the end. And as always, Bob, these run-ins towards the finish in towns like Orléans are dotted by these very, very difficult bits of traffic furniture.
Well, how many riders have come to grief on the traffic islands that precede and come after those giant roundabouts or traffic circles? It's innumerable at this point in France. Traffic-wise, that's what they've decided to do, but it makes it very tough on the bike racers, very challenging. You always have to have your head up and anticipate what's coming up the road.
You certainly do, sitting in the back of the group there, wearing number 77, the rider there, and that is the rider from AG2R, and that, of course, is Anthony Ravard. We've hardly spoken about him here this afternoon. He could be the rider to try and make a last-minute burst. 176, just sitting on the back of the group as well. He's the rider from Team Katusha. That is Simon Spilak. He's the champion of Slovenia. Nervous moments now. These guys know they've got fast men in this group. Men like Bonen, men like Rojas, men like Vicioso, men like John Deckenkolb. They realise that if they want to get a victory here this afternoon, they've got to go for the last-minute attack. But it's hard to attack at 4 kilometres to go when you've got a man like Levi Leipheimer turning up the gas. Leipheimer, Bob, not at all thinking at all for himself this afternoon. Now you can just see moving up the outside, Vacansoleil. That's Louis Wienstra. He was a winner on 2 occasions last year. He's going to make a move down the left-hand side now. Who is going to respond to this? This is a good last-minute burst, but I think the man going to make the move there is the champion of France, Sylvain Chavanel, who won't let anybody get clear.
Omega Quick-Step with some hardened veterans in Sylvain Chavanel and Levi Leipheimer. They will not make any mistakes tactically. They've been in this situation before, and Tom Bonen, the team captain, the fastest sprinter on that team in this breakaway, he's asking his riders to come through, keep doing the work. Westra put in the attack, but Sylvain Chavanel easily closing the gap.
Well, I'd have to say, Bob, in cycling parlance, that was a little bit like wet dynamite, because he really didn't get very much off the front end of the main field, and that's, of course, because of the grimacing, the work being done by the red, white and blue jerseyed Sylvain Chavanel, champion of France. Since he moved across from Cofidis to join the Quick-Step squad a couple of years ago, he really has become a seasoned professional bike rider.
Most certainly has. 4 riders from the Omega team in the breakaway, including Tom Bonen. That gives them a huge advantage. Sylvain Chavanel and Levi Leipheimer, they will do the work. If you get a little bit frisky and you don't have a great sprint, let's say you're a rider like Alejandro Valverde, you decide, I think I'll go with 3 kilometers to go. Well, that man on the front, Sylvain Chavanel, will chase you down. The best tactic, perhaps, be as patient as possible and hope you have the strength to overcome Tom Bonen. That's going to be a very tall order.
Well, don't get caught out there, Bob, by that white jersey. Well, I keep getting caught out because TJ Van Garderen, the American rider on BMC, he's riding very close to the front, and because he's young, because he's nervous, he will try and get himself a place in the top 3 at the finish line as well, because let's not forget there are time bonuses available at the end of today's stage. 10 seconds for the first rider to cross the line, 6 for second place and 4 for third place. Now those time bonuses could be very, very important when we get down to the end of this race in Nice.
Also with Levi Leipheimer looking perhaps at a chance at the yellow jersey. Bradley Wiggins, virtual leader at this point. He will probably get that jersey, but there are big time bonuses. Levi Leipheimer starting the stage just a couple seconds slower after the time trial than Bradley Wiggins. We did see Wiggins get 3 seconds bonus on the first time sprint out on the course, so he has a pretty handy lead in that competition, but lots of time as well as points up for grabs at the end of today's stage.
I tell you what, only 1 victory to his credit last year, Sylvain Chavanel, but the year before that, 2 stage victories in the Tour de France. At the moment, he is dishing out some serious pain here this afternoon. He is setting a tempo so hard that it's preventing anybody else from attacking. In fact, most of the guys in this bike race, Bob, are saying, oh, I'm just quite happy to be sitting here in the slipstream because this is starting to hurt.
Bradley Wiggins stepping out of the rotation there. He wants to keep his eye on his rivals. Sylvain Chavanel laying down a heavy tempo. If you're a rider like Maxime Montfort from the Radio Shack squad, you need the tempo to slow down just a little bit to have a chance to perhaps put in a little bit of an attack. But Quick-Step, with the superior numbers and the great athletes they have in the breakaway, are making that impossible so far.
As the Belgian commentators would say, Tommeke, Tommeke, Tommeke. That's him wearing number 2 there, sitting on the wheel there of his teammates, and Nicolas Maas. He will use Maas right up to the final moment there. He's looking very calm and collected, but look at the face. This man is dishing out the pain. He's keeping the pace nice and high, making sure that any surprise attacks are not going to come. There is the final kilometre, Bob. Now, can anybody beat Tom Bonen in a sprint like this today?
Well, not with the work that's being done on the front of the peloton, this group by Sylvain Chavanel. The last 2.5 kilometers, he sat right at the front. He just pulls off now. Great turn of work by Sylvain Chavanel. Tom Bonen will take note of that and absolutely do everything in his power to win today's stage.
Ooh, a tricky little traffic circle inside of the final 1,000 meters. They're keeping the pace nice and high now. Now is the time not to let the gaps go on the run-in. They're going to start to get that straight line into the finish now, Bob, because here we go. The big acceleration is starting to come thick and fast.
Here it is. This is the back of the front group. A rider getting a little bit of an advantage there. Tom Bonen's going to need a teammate to close that gap down. Looks like Rivad, the second man on the road, trying to close that gap to our lone. Is that Sepp Van Mark?
Well, I don't know whether it's Sepp Van Mark. He's got a blue helmet on. One fine little corner coming around, and then all of a sudden, right in front of you, you will find opening up the straight to the finishing line now. Coming around the outside, everybody's trying to close down all these gaps. This is what it looks like at the back end of the main field. 500 meters to go now. Now they've got the organization up into third place there. You can see JJ Rojas, champion of Spain. He's going to wait for the moment to pounce. That's Sepp Van Mark in fourth position there. I think now the challengers are coming left and right. Tom Bonen has got himself tucked right into second position there. Ken Degenkolb is over on the right-hand side there. Taylor Finney in the black and red. He's trying to get himself a victory if he can, but up through the middle, it's going to be Tom Bonen now who's leading that out. Degenkolb is up onto his wheel. He's going to challenge him. John Degenkolb is coming up alongside Tom Bonen there. They all think they've got the victory. The victory goes to Tom Bonen here this afternoon. I think it was Degenkolb gets himself second place. Joachim Rojas gets himself in third place. Bonen wanted that victory there this afternoon. Let's have a look at this one more time.
Tom Bonen put it in the acceleration a long ways from the finish line, ran out of teammates. His teammates did work throughout the stage. A very satisfying victory that has to be for Tomica. The man from Belgium delivers a great team effort. They saw the crosswinds, they went to the front, they put the hammer down, they separated themselves from the peloton, and Tom Bonen back on the top of his game. That was an absolutely spectacular win.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, Bob, on the running towards the finish. So just have a look at this. This is when Tom Bonen starts the acceleration there. You've got Degenkolb has actually got the advantage there over on the right-hand side, but when Big Tom has got the form, when he's got the power, gets those legs ticking over, goodbye Vienna. Everybody's going to see the back wheel of Tom Bonen here this afternoon, and as they lunge for the line, in fact, it looks at this point, in fact, it wasn't Degenkolb who held on there, I think, Bob, for second place. In fact, it was Rojas.
Absolute devastation for the second group out on the road. These are the chasers. They're going to lose over 2 minutes. Bradley Wiggins will take over the yellow jersey from Gustav Larsson, and damage being done by the Omega Quick Step team to get the stage win and help Levi Leipheimer and Sylvain Chavanel in the overall standings. An absolute disaster for these riders, not paying attention in the crosswinds, and the front group, those 21 riders, killing them on today's stage.
Well, they're certainly giving themselves a serious chance there of winning Paris-Nice this week, because at the top end of the leaderboard, Bradley Wiggins, Levi Leipheimer and TJ Van Garderen are moving themselves a lot further ahead of everybody else in this bike race here this afternoon. To ride yourself back into Paris-Nice after a devastating opening road stage like this is going to be very, very tough for the likes of Tony Martin. Well, I tell you what, Bob, we're looking at the clock there, and it's going to go outside of that 2-minute mark. And I have to say, although we're saying Tony Martin was the big loser, he's not really, because his teammates have won the stage here this afternoon, and they've moved themselves very high up in the overall standings with Levi Leipheimer and, of course, Tom Bonen and Sylvain Chavanel.
You should see Andreas Kloden, Yanni Brockovich, Thomas Vogler, and the yellow jersey of Gustav Larsson all in this group. Look at that time gap closing in on 2.5 minutes. If you're not in the first 21, you can almost kiss Paris-Nice goodbye. That race is gone up the road.
Well, I tell you what, there's going to be a lot of sore legs here this afternoon. A very tough opening stage, and tomorrow is going to be even harder because there's two very nasty climbs on the run-in towards the finish in the Lac du Vassivière. But look at Bonen. I think Bobby has put all of the bad luck behind him of the last 2 seasons, and at 31 years of age, I reckon Big Tomica is back on his game. Watch out for him. Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix coming up in about a month.
Boom, boom, Bonen back on his best form. Great stage win after an absolutely brutal stage in Paris-Nice today.
Well, when he looks at the result, he will be happy to see that win ahead of JJ Rojas and John Degenkolb, 2 very good sprinters. And Sepp Van Mark, Garmin Barracuda, watch out for him later on in the season, because he's going to be maybe the new sprinter on the block. Taylor Finney for BMC Racing, well up there in 8th place, just ahead of Alejandro Valverde, and the Welshman Geraint Thomas from Team Sky Pro Cycling in 10th place. Well, as we look back at that great victory of Tom Bonen, we'll take a short break and come back with the podiums and, of course, the new overall standings. Well, looking down on the River Loire, the longest river in France, we've seen a magical battle here this afternoon. The victory going to Tom Boonen, his 5th victory so far, Bob, this season.
5 wins on the season. He's looking forward to the tougher one-day monuments of the sport of cycling, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, but he has got a great start to this season going already.
Well, it really is a reflection of the character that this man's got, to be beaten down so much by injury and accidents over the last couple of seasons and to fight his way back up.
A true fighter, a true warrior, Tom Boonen, big star of cycling, big star of Belgium, but you got to deliver the goods, and he's back on the top of his game.
And maybe more importantly for the team, he's going to put 4,000 euros into his back pocket for the victory here this afternoon. At the current exchange rates, that's $5,500. And that's why I think today, if we're going to pick anybody for the Michelob Ultra Ride of the Day, Bob, it's got to be Tomica.
He put his teammates on the front of the peloton throughout the day's proceedings, and then he delivered the goods with an explosive sprint over 2 of the fastest men in the business, John de Genkolb, J.J. Rojas. That is a solid win for Tom Boonen. He's very pleased with that.
I don't think anyone will dispute the fact that that's why we've given Tom Boonen here this afternoon the Michelob Ultra Ride of the Day. So there's going to be a new change in the overall yellow jersey competition as well, and that will go to the British national champion, Bradley Wiggins.
Very heads-up riding by Bradley Wiggins. He's got a huge advantage on almost all of his rivals except for Levi Leipheimer and TJ Van Garderen. The yellow jersey is a big battle still, but Bradley Wiggins getting the time bonus halfway through the bike race, and of course the yellow jersey at the end of the day.
No, looking very solid, having a very solid team behind him, and it's going to be important over the next couple of days. The gap's starting to open a fraction. Levi Leipheimer in 2nd place, 6 seconds back. Tom Boonen with that time bonus today up into 3rd place, just ahead of TJ Van Garderen in 4th place at 11 seconds. A little bit further down, Taylor Phinney right up there in the action in 7th place at 21 seconds, just the same as his age, in fact. And JJ Rojas of Spain in 10th place, looking for 29 seconds. And enjoying his kite flying in France here this afternoon in 29th place, Brett Bookwalter of BMC Racing. A little further down, 51st place for Andreas Kloden. But the white jersey, Bob, now seemingly quite firm on the shoulders of TJ Van Garderen.
A special jersey is given to the best young rider. That's a rider under 25 years of age. TJ Van Garderen, in a number of stage races so far in his career, he's dominated that competition, but I think he has eyes on the yellow jersey. He'd love to change white for yellow, of course. He'd win the white jersey too if he won Paris-Nice.
And he has been knocking on the door of a big stage race victory since last year, when he was 2nd overall in the Tour of the Algarve, 5th overall in the Amgen Tour of California, and 3rd overall in August in the USA Pro Cycling Challenge. I have to say, this young man who hails from Bozeman in Montana will spend the majority of his season in Lucca, Italy, although he calls home Boulder, Colorado. He will be looking to ride well tomorrow, because there's a lumpy little finish on the run in towards the finish. Don't forget, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with Stage 3 tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. And of course, don't forget, if you want to tune in as well, you can't miss the launch of the Major League Soccer Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's the FC Dallas taking on the New York Red Bulls. Well, if you want all of our news, check into NBCSports.com. There are stories and information there which you may well not be able to find anywhere else. Until tomorrow, on behalf of Bob Roll, I'm Paul Sherwin saying goodbye.